Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third half. This is the FCS Live podcast brought to you by Ally Marketing. We're excited to welcome Jack Fisher to the show tonight. Jack from Lansing City, thanks so much for jumping in with us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So I'm Jared Kleppel along with Gerard Iscani and Jack Fisher, of course, our special guest. We're going to be talking about what the latest is going on in the FCS this week and preview some upcoming games, and we're going to talk about Detroit Imperial a little bit later too. You know, they started the year out with 3 strong wins, and I guess we'll debate if we consider them strong or not, but 3 wins, and then they've most recently dropped 3 games in a row. So what's going on with the defending FCS champs? We will find out a little more later, but first, we want to talk to Jack Fisher. Jack, you have been playing in futsal and for Lansing City for quite some time now, right?
Yes, I've been playing for the past 5 years. Yeah, I've been playing. I've grown up in the youth academy over the past couple of years. And last year, towards the tail end of the FCS season, I got my first start and played a couple games then. And then this year was kind of my first full season of FCS.
That's amazing. So tell me about that transition. You've been playing, you know, I want to hear more about your story and how you got into futsal and that kind of thing. But the transition specifically from being in the youth to getting your first call up on the pro side, what was that like for you? And I'm sure you're even still like feeling that transition being only your second season.
Yeah, so around the start of last season, I was on the academy team or whatever, and Jeremy had asked me, I had asked him, I was like, okay, I want to try to train with the pro team. I want to improve. I want to get better and stuff like that. And he kind of gave me that chance to start training with the team towards the earlier start of the season. I picked up like a injury about a little bit into that, but then towards the end of the season through January and February, as players started to kind of go off and do their own thing, colleges and other stuff like that, I eventually got to get more and more chances to play for the team. And it's kind of a big step up compared to like the youth level in a sense where everything's a lot faster. Like you have to be smarter and all that. So it's definitely a big kind of jump compared to but it's fun and I really enjoyed it.
Well, that's awesome. I know we've really enjoyed watching you play. Gerard and I have talked multiple times, both on and off stream, about you playing, and sometimes it was a matter of whether you were going to be in a game or not in a game. I know right now you have an injury, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, how you got started in futsal, and I know for many people that involves soccer. And then, Gerard, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, so I started about 5 years ago, right about when this arena was actually built. I remember trying out for the team when there was only a tile court down here. The full arena wasn't even made, and
Did you play with the drop ceiling?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so I was here, trained up for like one day in the summer or whatever, and he was like, you can join. And after that, I started playing. It kind of was like a rocky start in a sense where like I had got invited by a friend, like suggested by a couple of friends from my soccer club to try it out. And like we were not that good of a team. We lost a lot of our games, stuff like that. But I was like, okay, I enjoy this. I want to stick with it. Then the COVID hit and everything kind of went online that year. Like I remember we used to do Zoom like trainings all the time with Jeremy, stuff like that.
How do you do that? Let me just interrupt you real quick. How do you do a Zoom futsal training, right?
Yeah, so like basically just with a wall and a futsal ball at that point, like we would basically just do basic technical movements and other stuff like that, just so when we're back, we're actually able to do a lot of the stuff that we weren't able to do before. And that's when I really kind of got like into futsal in a sense, because before it'd been kind of like not the best. Like we didn't learn a lot of the technical aspect or the tactical of it. Like learned a lot of positions and stuff like that, but it wasn't more of like how the futsal I see today is. And that's when it first kind of started about facing up, all of the technical aspects of it. And a lot of tactical aspects, as Jeremy would kind of like tactical sessions. I kind of find. And then the year after, like right when we got back, I remember training in masks on half of the court out there.
Wow.
And that's when we first kind of got to train with Drew Barney, a lot of the other players. And kind of just grew from there, from playing, being the time.
And it ties into something I was thinking when you were talking about the difference from the youth academy to the professional team. Is what was the difference of having those teammates around you? Because we have Drew Barney playing there. What other teammates as well were with you from the youth academy that you're now playing with on this team?
So about 2 years before I joined, I first kind of started playing with Castaneda and Elijah Vu on the academy team. They're a year old. Chance to play. Same with Lucy. And from then, we kind of were training at 3 different ages, kind of all training together, just trying to compete for spots on an academy roster, to improve and stuff like that. Around year after that, a lot of players dropped off, and it's about the 5 of us. But we have all stuck with it through the year. It's definitely helped with playing from academy team to pro team. Everyone knows their roles and their tactical, and it's not like we have to read a lot of the new players and stuff like that. We know we can hop right into a game and know what we're doing, which has definitely helped throughout the.
That's great. That's really cool. I was actually, when you were talking about the players that you played with, I think you said you played up with Elijah Vu and Ethan Castaneda. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. It made me think about the ceiling for your guys' team right now. You guys have, let's go through all the players that have come from the academy that are either 18, 19, and younger, right?
Yes.
You, Elijah Vu, Ethan Castaneda,
Drew Barney.
Is Luciano?
Luciano has also come through the ranks, and you have a couple of newer players who just kind of started playing futsal this season in the academy, who have got some mini games like Oliver Timblow and Santiago Contreras.
Okay.
Who have come up slightly through.
Gotcha.
And Max.
Oh, Max Kuhn.
Yes.
Max Kuhn. Okay.
He has also come up through the ranks for the past couple of players who I've played with for about 3 or 4 years.
Okay. Awesome. Just a reminder, go ahead and hold that mic nice and close to you so that way everyone can hear you. But anyways, we've talked about this before as well, just the ceiling that Lansing City has. I know you guys didn't start out the season the way you wanted to. 1 win, 4 losses. You guys just picked up another win. But tell me a little bit about, it really seems like not that you guys didn't want to win those games, but it's like the losses haven't really bothered you because you see a bigger vision in where you guys are going.
Yeah, we're kind of building the base right now, especially through this past year and stuff like that. We're trying to really build a base to our program and stuff like that, build tactical, technical, all those aspects, so we can build on it then in the future. So it's not like we have to rechange our roster over every single season like we kind of have in past seasons. We're really trying to build that base so we can just keep on improving, learning more things, and getting better and better. So I feel like it's not like those losses, yes, they're losses, but it's more of a learning curve, and we know we're doing the right things, and we're in those games, they're just mistakes that we need to work on and stuff like that. Whereas we've seen a lot of improvement, and we're doing the things we want to be doing in those games. So I feel like that's a big aspect of what we've been doing.
One of the things I think about, you mentioned all of the tutelage that Jeremy provided during COVID and the youth academy. How has his tutelage changed from going from the youth team to now with Lansing City? How has that interaction or guidance or tutelage maybe adjusted or gotten more intense?
It's definitely changed because you're going from being coached as him to playing and coaching with him. It's very kind of different. You're going from the player you've looked up to, as a young player, going to the games, I want to play like him. Now actually playing with him, and it's kind of a really fun experience to be able to play with the person you've grown up watching playing the sport and stuff like that. And you're still learning and stuff like that, but then you can start giving him input on ideas on which you have by watching games and stuff like that, which is kind of fun. it's not just you learning now, you're both learning from the sport and you're both making changes and stuff like that throughout the season.
Wow. That's so cool. That's really cool. A couple of questions coming in for you. I'm going to do this one first because it kind of plays into the question you asked about Jeremy. This one's from Luke. He said, what's it like being trained by Jeremy Thunder Thighs Kleppel? Does he have any special, quad workouts for you guys?
No, he does not, sadly. But, I mean, a lot of the training just comes in from, he tells, all the training that we do in practice is tactical and stuff like that, but he really encourages us to come in on our own time. He's like, you have access to all the gym, the arena, and all that stuff to use that time to train and improve on your ability so you can become a better player. And even just watching games, like watching futsal games, stuff like that, just to really improve as a player and learn new things, which I kind of love to do, is watch just games and give input on certain things I think we should change within the our style of play and stuff like that.
Well, if you love doing that, maybe you'll be a regular on the show here.
Well, a lot of times when we talk about professional athletes, we talk about the training that goes into it. When you think about as a team member in the youth academy and then now where you're at, what changed with your training regimen and the amount of time that you spend maybe daily, weekly?
I think definitely the amount that I watch games and futsal games, and most of the time if I can, I'm using my free time to come in here, train in the arena and stuff like that when I can, especially on breaks with school and everything like that. But I think it's also you spend more time kind of on the game and stuff like that compared to it was originally kind of just a side thing for soccer, being oh, I want to improve my technical ability and stuff like that. But now it's kind of turned into a lifestyle where I want to keep on learning and improving, and I've really come to love the game and everything like that.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I got a couple questions in mind for you. One coming from you guys in the chat. So just a reminder, if you want to ask Jack Fisher of Lansing City any questions, put your question in the chat. We'd love to get to your questions. This one's coming from Jake George, who often joins us as a third commentator. But he's wondering what your perspective is on the culture of Lansing City team. We talked a little bit about this, but the culture of Lansing City and what makes this futsal team's culture so special.
I think it's the fact that we're all kind of driven towards a common goal, and we want to learn and improve not only our team and ourselves, but also the culture towards futsal in the U.S. We want to keep on bringing more people towards the sport and everything, and we're always inviting other people to kind of come watch us, not only just expand our own knowledge, but expand people of Lansing and throughout the state of Michigan and U.S. their knowledge on futsal as well. And that's we're all just kind of pushing towards that common goal of doing that. Kind of fun.
That's awesome.
When you think about that too, with the USL2 team, and we know that you play outdoor as well.
Yes.
And some of the other team members like Luciano, we know that he plays. Is that something that you all talk about on the team of how do we continue to take what we have with the futsal team and go play for the USL2 team as well?
It's more, I don't think it's as much of an aspect of that. I think we kind of tend to stick more to futsal and communicate within ourselves, as a lot of us kind of have different, some of us play soccer outside of it. A lot of the younger players all play soccer outside of it for their own separate clubs and stuff like that. And while a few of us do play for the USL2 team, not many of us do. So it's kind of more of an aspect we're more focused on the futsal side of things, and we're always talking with each other. Me and Drew talk a lot about different tactics we want to try and different things we want to try for futsal and stuff like that. But I think we kind of keep soccer and futsal separate in that sense.
We're going to have some more questions for Jack, and we might even go over some film of Lansing City and some games maybe he's played in, get his thoughts on how the team's looking in preparation for this weekend's game hosting Jinga. That and some questions about Jack's experience in futsal and soccer coming up just after the break, so don't go anywhere.
Committing a crime so you can try to escape from prison. Bad idea. Go into the pod escape room to play an escape game with your friends. Great idea. Test your skill as an astronaut in outer space. Find Santa in Save Christmas. Or take a vacation to an abandoned island. Just don't get stuck there. The Pod Escape Room. Learn more at thepodlansing.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the third half, the live podcast put on by the FCS team. I'm Jared Klepp along with Gerard Iscani, and special guest Jack Fisher is here with us. Jack, thanks for being here. It's been a blast talking with him and learning more about him and his futsal journey. So if you missed that portion, you're going to want to back this up and watch that back. But right now, we brought up Jack Fisher's first goal of the year, actually Lansing City's first goal of the whole year, and we're going to take a look at this. So, Jack, break this down for us. It starts with a keeper restart right here.
Yeah, so right now we're set up in Y. As you can see, our Jonah up in the top corner right there, he's cutting off the court in half, basically. So
this pass right here.
Yeah, he's cutting off that pass so that way we can force the team onto their left side of the court. So
And why do you guys force them to the left side?
Because you're trying to force them. You're trying to cut off their weak foot.
Like force them to their weak foot.
Force them to their weak foot, so they
okay.
can't make a easy pass with the outside of their foot. We're trying to basically put them in a scenario where it's easier for us to win the ball and stuff like that.
Okay.
Off of it.
So I'll start playing, and if you want
Yep.
me to pause and
Yep.
talk, let me know. So here's the ball coming from the keeper.
Yeah. So as you can see, Jonah's cutting the court in half, and we're kind of just closing the space down in a sense and compressing it so they can't play out of it.
Yeah, I saw that. Like almost.
All
like
of us.
He kind of takes a turn.
And he can't play because we're cutting the court in half, so
Yeah,
he can't.
look at this. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
So this pass isn't there. David's right here. So really this turn, that got this guy into trouble.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of we're trying to just kind of cut the court in half. So as you can see, we're basically all of their players now are on one side other than one player.
Yeah.
That's what we really want to do is just kind of put them into a tight area.
And this is you right here, number 11, right?
Yes.
So this is the man, the myth, the legend right here. Everybody watch what 11 does here. Scooping it up. And now you guys transition to offense. So once you guys do that, it seems like you quickly go to a 3-1 here. Is that correct?
Yes, we transitioned to a 3-1 here with Jonah up a bit.
Okay, so you got Jonah up top, and then we got David on one side, Jeremy on the other side. So do you commonly play Fixo? Is that your position?
Yes, I have traditionally played Fixo over the most of my career and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Sometimes I'll play Ala, but traditionally I've played Fixo.
And so one of the things we were talking about earlier was the difference between 3-1 and 4-0.
Yeah.
Right there, when you all steal the ball, is that something that you're already planning on what you're going to do, or is it just kind of depending on how the defense reacts?
We traditionally will have a set kind of formation beforehand, and it'll depend on the team and our personnel on the court, kind of which one we are doing. So here we're doing 3-1 because we have a pivot on, whereas sometimes we'll train 4-0 because we don't have a pivot and we have maybe someone like Drew Barney on.
Yep.
So in this case, you guys are in the 3-1, and when you're playing the ball here, you're looking for. So first it goes into Jeremy, and then into you, back to David. So that run where you kind of after you pass, you went into the middle.
Yes.
Tell me your thought process, because I know sometimes you don't want to clog the middle, and sometimes you want to check in there. So
I was kind of more of trying to give myself a passing lane in the middle so that way I can just do a quick 1-2 or something like that. I was kind of trying to see if I can condense the space in the middle, so that way it leaves space for David or Jonah for a ball.
And so Jonah here clears out and goes to the right-hand side of the court. Is that part of the intentionality with this play?
It's more of like as I go into that middle space, Jonah will get wide, so that way we're not in the same spot.
So the play continues. And eventually they leave you.
And so if you could pause it.
Boom. Right there. You want me to go back?
Yeah, go
Let's
back.
See the goal
Let's see. One of the things I want to learn, and I know our viewers at home want to learn this as well. So when you drop into the middle and Jonah goes out and vacates, giving space, right?
Yes.
Is that David Saltzman, is that his cue to then drop back more? Because you can see how he drops back to midcourt when Jonah is over here, because that gives you an outlet to pass through too.
Yeah, he's kind of trying to give me a passing lane where I can pass to him, but he's also trying to give it a passing lane where like he can be able to pass to anyone on the court, and like he has kind of full choice of where he can go.
Yeah.
Whereas if he's higher up the court, it leaves me without an option, but it also leaves kind of himself without a choice to do.
Let's run this one through. Find you in the back post, top shelf, and that's goal number 1 for you and for the Lansing City Club.
Yes.
To start off the FCS. We'll take another look at that one. So you were pretty open there. How often are you that open on the back post?
It depends on the game. Sometimes I've been pretty open there, like especially with Midwest. I think I was open there about 3 times on that back post. But a lot of other teams tend to not give up as much space. Like it's especially hard with teams like LA. like they kind of close down that space and make work him back, so it's harder to
Yeah.
passes across.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely have seen. Grand Rapids Olay in the games that they've played, they are probably one of the most disciplined teams defensively, right?
Yes.
They do a lot of the right things. They don't give up a lot of easy ones, like you got here. And not to take away from the credit of the goal, but it was a pretty sweet finish top shelf. Even if the goalie was going to be in a position to maybe make a save, you definitely put that one away. Amazing. Anything else you wanted to break down about this play?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Well, the thing that's funny, right, is he's saying he was so open, and really almost taking credit away from it because of the defense. But when you look at the pass and the finish, I mean, it's literal inches away from being saved or you not connecting with the ball.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a really amazing finish, and then a great pass by Jonah.
Yeah, it
was. I mean, he did have to cut through because you have Posthuma right there, and then number 11. I'm not sure who that was, but he was closing down too. So there was a really tight window to make that pass.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times you'll see goals like that in a sense where you have a player down on the side of the court or kind of the corner of the court making a pass across the goal for a shot at the back post. Like that back post is kind of a key area when it comes to futsal, and where it's a spot where it's harder for the goalkeeper to save, but it's a very easy it's a very easy tap in a sense. But it's also like a lot of defensive teams have to like close down that space.
Yeah.
They close that gap more, so it's very unlikely that you'll get a scenario like this against a higher level team.
Yeah.
Well, let's flip it for a second, right? And now you're the coach of Midwest on this play where the action's happening. What would you do different?
I think Midwest does most of their the play fine. I think part of the issue is that Fixo back of the back probably isn't as much as he should be on Jonah and giving him space to turn and play it across the goal. I think that's kind of the main difference is if there's more pressure on that pivot in a sense, it's harder for him to turn and get across. That chance is very unlikely.
What do you think he was doing there?
I don't know off the top of my head from the.
Let's see. Let's back it up and see.
Yeah, because it is kind of interesting. Why would he drop that far off? Because Timblow comes across the lane and then goes out wide, and then he just stays there. And so it just makes me wonder, why wouldn't he go with Timblow, like what you're talking about?
Yeah, you're kind of trying to I think he should be closing down the space and applying pressure there, because that's kind of.
It kind of starts with the transition here, because you look at the two players in the back. Neither one of them are pulling up to David. So the transition, he's trying to get back. So this transition moment, I think, is not spectacular. Though they kind of get into the spot. I think maybe this might be. I think they were playing more of a zone.
Yeah,
I think they were trying to be in this diamond.
If you look in that Fixo, he's kind of tucked more inside as Jonah pulls out.
Yeah.
I think he should probably be following him a little bit more, or at least number 11 should be dropping down a little bit to cover that pass.
And then, of course, Jeremy has the ball on the outside. That draws a lot of attention. He's got two players trying to trap. That gives you a little space on the inside because number 11 for Midwest didn't get in front of you.
Looking at it now, it kind of looks like the Fixo for Midwest kind of just looks away, can't find Jonah, and kind of runs around in a.
Oh, you know what? He might have been running back post, because back post is such a popular place.
Yeah, especially when Jeremy has the ball.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so, and then he goes back post, and then there's not a run there.
Out,
and then he gets,
He probably thought that Fixo or that pivot was on that back post.
So actually, one of the things when we're looking back and kind of breaking this down, it's really interesting to see how smart of a run and really positioning of where Jonah put himself at. Because instead of making like a back post run, which is really common, because he could have made a back post run right here, right? He could have made that back post run, but Midwest really had that covered. And so then he drifts out wide even more, which creates more space. Saltzman sees him, makes the pass, and it really helps lead to a fantastic goal.
I think it's interesting. I'm going to take a look at Jonah here. I used to play pivot for Lansing City and spent many games on that back post when Jeremy Kleppel had the ball, right? I knew that he was going to be trying to take a shot on goal. And it's very interesting when you play the game, those back posts kind of tap in. Sometimes they seem so easy, and they should be like, you need to make those goals.
Mm-hmm.
But the pressure can you can feel the pressure, and sometimes it's like you can be here, or you can be maybe like a half step this way, and it changes what you have the ability to do. And it's like at that point you're just trying to get anything on it, like just hit me, man, get it in the goal. You know what I mean? Like
just like one like step off or something like that can change if the ball's going in the back of the net. Like one switch off your positioning changes.
We saw that on Saturday too with Trezor. He's on the back post, and Jeremy sends a rocket in there, and Trezor has no chance to move in front of it.
He's trying to move,
and he gets his arm on it. Sadly the referee saw it though correctly and called it.
Sadly, that's good. That's good. That's good.
No, they made a great call. They made a great call. Trezor wasn't able to get there, and it's one of those challenges though when you're making that back post run of being in the right position, because if that ball's a little bit to the left, then Trezor's in the perfect position for the ball.
It's definitely a challenging, it's definitely a challenging kind of movement. You have to be in the right like lane of shot and all that stuff. Like just if that's split second decision, just try to get your foot on the ball.
Not that we're talking about this now, but one of the things that I'm really curious about is with how hard Jeremy can hit the ball, the pace that he can deliver, not only a shot but a pass. How can you be in the right spot?
It's more of like you're trying to just get yourself into a position where you can see both him and have your body angled at the goal. Because you're trying to kind of just like, body is more of kind of like a wall, kind of like for the ball to bounce off the goal. More of than an actual, like, you're trying to actually take a shot. You're more of kind of just like the ricochet kind of thing off of a shot or a pass back. That's more kind of the.
Well, clearly you guys able to make it happen in this play, but we do have a couple of questions coming from the chat. So I have my own question kind of as it relates to soccer and futsal. I know that you also spend a lot of time on the pitch outside, but your teammate, David Saltzman, has a couple of questions for you. He said, and I quote, "In a 1v1 with Drew Barney, who comes out on top and by how much?"
I think it depends on, like, is it just a 1v1, like we're both trying to go to goal, like against each other? Because I think it depends, because I think he probably has the better upper hand with, like, he's definitely a better attacker in a sense. I'm probably a better defender than him. So I think it'll be kind of interesting where like, both of our strong suits kind of match up against each other. I think in the end, I might just beat him out just because of my physicality a little bit more on him. But,
all right. We might have to take next week's show to the court and see this happen.
Halftime challenge.
The halftime challenge. Yeah. And he did have a follow-up. His follow-up is when it comes to your goalkeepers, right? You got two goalkeepers.
Yes.
His question is, they both have strengths, they both have weaknesses. If you were, well, he said who's better, but I feel like that kind of puts you in a weird spot. And I'm sure that I know you guys all love each other in the team, and he's probably got a little bit of joke. He's trying to probably put some fire under you a little bit.
He wants you to say. He wants you to say the third option.
I think it depends on what it comes down to. Like, I think they're both good in their own areas. I think Ethan's very good at coming out and kind of going 1v1 with players and coming out and making clearance saves, much like David used to be himself when he played goalkeeper. I think Conrad's probably better when it comes to his feet and his, like, he's just kind of like a cat in the goal, kind of jumping from side to side, where I think Ethan's still in that development phase. Not that I think he's a very good goalkeeper, and I think they're both kind of level in ability. I think it's more of just, it's kind of like, what do you want? Like, Ethan's better at coming out of the goal and stuff like that and making those kind of saves. He's a really good shot stopper as well, where I think Conrad's more of just a shot stopper and someone who can be really good on the ball compared to Ethan. So yeah.
Well, there you go, David.
Well,
You had the you had the question that you wanted to ask, and there is the response. A couple more things before we let you go and move on to our next segment, where we're going to be talking about Detroit Imperial and how they start off the season, where they're at right now, and the outlook for them. But a couple of things. So first, a little insight into your journey with soccer and futsal. I know one of the big things that the FCS is navigating right now is the players' commitment to futsal.
Yes.
And how you're living that right now, because you have you've grown up playing soccer, right? I'm sure you love both sports. Tell us a little bit about your journey from that standpoint, because it can be easy for people like me and Gerard to be like, man, we want these players to commit everything to futsal, and I'm sure he's smiling because I think he's told you that before. But from your point of view, what is that like when you are navigating? I mean, are you 16? Are you still
Yes,
16?
I
So
am
you're
16.
still 16. Like you're still trying to figure out like where. More than just futsal and soccer, but tell us a little bit about that.
So I think it kind of depends on like what's going on. Like I know I missed a game or so from me having to go to soccer and my team for soccer. Same with a couple of the other players on the team. But I think it kind of depends on like, I know one of the games I had to thing was a tournament over in a showcase in California, which I was like, I really wanted this opportunity to go be in front of college scouts and other stuff like that, so I decided to do that. But I think it's kind of the aspect of like, what's the next step in my life, like in like a lot of the other players' lives, like do I choose soccer or futsal? I'm kind of like still on the fence right now about which one I want to choose, but like that's why I want to do both, where I can do both futsal here and train like weekly, have extra trainings and other stuff like that, but I also want the opportunities to potentially play soccer in college, scholarships, stuff like that, and have that opportunity.
That's awesome. Well, we really appreciate your perspective on that. Do you have a follow-up, Gerard?
I'd love to hear, what do you love about each sport independently? Like, what do you love about futsal, and then what do you love about soccer?
What I love about futsal is it's a very fast-paced kind of game where you're not just like one kind of position. You're not just like one side of role or something like that. Like, yes, you have your role and everything, but you're both kind of on the attacking side and the defensive side. It's not like you're a center back whose job is to defend. You have to be part of the build-up. You have to be taking shots. You have to score goals. It's a lot more of like a faster-paced transition kind of game, which I love. And I love how fast like the game is, and that's kind of just what I love about it, is like very fast paced, very transitional, and I just want to learn so much about it and stuff like that, and see how I can apply that to both my sports. Soccer's more of a game that I've just been playing my whole life. Really come to love it over the past couple of years, especially through injury, stuff like that. I realize how much I miss both futsal and soccer, and being able to play those sports. Soccer is fun because I get more space. Yes, it's different where like not as much of a transitional get possession and stuff like that. But I think it's a kind of big difference between the two, and I love both kind of equal. I'm still trying to figure out which one more. But yeah.
Well, that's really cool. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to kind of take a peek under the hood and see what's going on in your mind, and how you approach both sports, and that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
The last thing that I wanted to talk about before we go on to our next segment is this upcoming game. You guys are hosting Jenga. This is going to be a rematch from one of your first games. I think your very first game this season, I believe, was away to Jenga. But you didn't travel that game. Is that correct?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I was that was the game that both David Saltzman didn't travel for. I had a game in Grand Rapids off at a reffing. So we both missed that game. But I think it'll be an interesting game, as both teams have improved a lot since that first kind of encounter, where we were missing a lot of players and everything, but I think both teams at full match just I think it'll also depend on who Jenga brings. Jenga brings their best players. I think it'll be a good game and everything, but I think if they don't, I think
Yeah, I know that the trip to Cincinnati or Jenga making the trip out of Cincinnati, that's been a challenge for many teams this year, but whether going there or them coming to outside of the state. So they definitely have it the hardest when it comes to the travel for sure. But we're looking forward to seeing that one this weekend. And I know we got another great game that's going on that weekend too. That's going to be really two defending champions. And we'll talk more about that. That one's a really exciting one. But I know that we'll miss you playing in that game because I know you're still nursing that injury. How long will it be before you think you'll be back on the court?
Probably about a month or so, maybe. Hopefully, I'm hoping to be back in about a couple of weeks. Trying to be there for that last game of the season against Olay. Maybe, hopefully, can get a few minutes in for the Detroit Imperial game. But I think it'll just depend on how long that recovery is.
Well, we're excited to have you come back to the action and hope that your injury heals up real quick.
Thank you.
And we're excited to see Lansing City and Jenga this weekend, as well as the other game, Olay and Detroit Imperial at Detroit Imperial. I believe it is, right? It's in Detroit there. The defending champs of the two respective leagues going to be clashing in that one. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that game, as well as Detroit Imperial and what their season has been so far and what the outlook is for them coming up very soon. So don't go anywhere.
Committing a crime so you can try to escape from prison. Bad idea. Going to the pod escape room to play an escape game with your friends. Great idea. Test your skill as an astronaut in outer space. Find Santa in Save Christmas. Or take a vacation to an abandoned island. Just don't get stuck there. The Pod Escape Room. Learn more at thepodlansing.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Third Half, the FCS Live podcast brought to you by Ally Marketing. I'm Jared Kleppel along with Gerard Iscani. We just recently had Jack Fisher on the show. If you missed that portion, it was great fun to learn about him and kind of get a peek inside his head and how he's played futsal and soccer, and he even got to break down some Lansing City plays, which was great. So make sure that you check out that if you missed it. And now we get to the meat of tonight's show, which we're talking about all about Detroit Imperial and this game we got coming up on Saturday. Grand Rapids Olay traveling to Detroit Imperial. You got two defending champions of their own respective leagues. Grand Rapids Olay, the NFPL defending champs, and Detroit Imperial, the FCS defending champs. This should be an exciting game.
It definitely should be. The only question I have is what Imperial team's going to show up. Are we going to see all of their starters? Because when we look at last week, I don't think that was a true measure of who they are as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And I still stand behind what I said because we didn't see all of their players. And when you look at how they played last week compared to how they played earlier in the season, it wasn't the same team. Right, I mean, and you would expect that, not having all of the players there.
All the
just
roster
the style,
sheet, totally
the style
different.
didn't play the same.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love to see is DePoche's creativity. We missed that. Michael Forbes flying as a keeper. Love seeing that, and we lost that. Velasquez did an amazing job in goal. So it'll be really interesting to see how do we integrate both of them into the game, because I think they both can play a role. And it might even be kind of like Midwest, where you dedicate a half to each goalie, and your style just adjusts. But not having DePoche or Forbes there really didn't give us a good picture of who they were against Lansing City, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that going against Olay is going to be a really big test. There's one other caveat to that, too. And this is the piece that Fabian talked about, the coach of Olay, when they went to Jenga, about playing on a really narrow court and how that changed the game.
Yeah.
And they weren't really able to pull out their style, and Imperial plays on a really narrow court. And so when we think about what kind of impact will that have, will Imperial be a little bit more equipped to play with that narrowness, or is Olay going to be able to impose their will on the game?
Yeah, well, it should be an exciting game coming up this weekend. I believe it's an 8 o'clock start. We're going to be streaming that live here on FCS Live. Detroit Imperial right now, that's kind of where we're setting our feet for the night. They started off the year at 3-0. And then they've lost 3 successive games. And we talked about, the most recent 2 games. When we get these rosters in, we're not seeing, there's 5, 6, 7 guys that we normally see, including those that you mentioned, that we just didn't see on the roster sheet. And to me, it was a little bit surprising because, one of those games, is against Lansing City, which is, it's kind of been a rivalry for a while. 2 of the oldest teams to be in the FCS. And then the one before that, I believe, was the FCS championship rematch from the previous year, when they went to Midwest United in Grand Rapids, and we didn't see those players in those games, and that was something that seemed like they were pretty significant games in the league, and that was the roster that we saw.
Yeah, the first few games of the season, I was really impressed with, not only with Forbes but with DePoche and the way that they worked as a team and the way that they covered each other. And it's one of the things that a lot of times, and we saw this from Velasquez when he did fly as a keeper, they lost possession of the ball and they didn't have a fixo that was covering back, right? And it's one of the challenges whenever you do fly the keeper, you want to make sure that you have a solid structure in place even while you're possessing the ball, that if you do lose the ball, if you do lose possession, there's a quick transition, that you have somebody that can help protect, and they didn't do that. And then Nyasaba scored a goal, right, on an open net. And it's one of the things that we think about when Forbes comes back into the action, if he's going to be able to play this weekend, and they do fly the keeper, typically DePoche is somebody that you could trust and depend to be in that fixo role to actually cover defensively if there is a quick change of possession.
And that's something that, as we look forward to the game this weekend, there's a lot that we hope to see between these two teams. We hope to see, I think we're going to expect to see Grand Rapids Olay. they often are very organized defensively. I think, playing on that little bit smaller, narrow court is definitely going to impact the game. It kind of does every time. And we'll see how their defensive structure. I feel like most of the time, a lot of times it just depends on what you're used to. I know we talked with Fabian about that a little bit, but the game changes significantly depending on the court size. And that's something that, even when teams have gone to play at Jenga, which Detroit Imperial has, they went to play at Jenga. They have one court that's very, very small. That probably shouldn't even have games on that court. And the other one, it looked to be a decent size, but it might have still been a little bit tighter. I don't quite know. But the big question for me when it comes to Detroit Imperial is, like you said, I think this is. They come into the season as defending FCS champs, and then now it's their time to show what they have this year. The games that they won this year is, they won the first one at home against Jenga, and I think looking back at that game, I think Jenga they're probably a different team right now, and maybe. As we see them travel more, we might see that team from the first game show up some more as they travel. And so that was their first one, and then 2 games against Midwest, and then a few losses here to in their last 3 games. Of course, they've been missing players and that kind of thing. But this is I think this is like a really big game for not only for Imperial, but kind of for the league.
Yeah, this is a huge game because Ole's coming to this league, and so far, they really haven't had a hard time putting their stamp on every game. So it was only the game against Midwest that they came away not taking full points. And so when you think about what Ole's been able to do in the league, will Detroit Imperial be able to step up? Because if Detroit Imperial does what they did last weekend, I think it's going to be a very similar result. Because when we look at how Lansing City was able to be successful, it was by controlling possession and being creative with their offensive structure and the system, and that's something that Ole really excels at. They're going to be able to maintain possession, and they're going to be creative on offense. And if Imperial just allows Ole to do that, and they play in that way that they are going to give possession to Ole, I think we're going to see a really similar result.
And actually looking at the chat here, Coach Pierce Brannigan has chimed in for Detroit Imperial. He's saying that, the guys everyone's back now and ready to go for the game on Saturday. So it looks like we're going to have, the full squad for them. He mentioned having up to, it looks like 15 players out of the country for a private tournament. And then a few that were out of the country with Dusan Yakitsa. And so these players are now coming back. And I know that it's a, regardless of where the players were or whether or not, they weren't at these games, right? They weren't at the Midwest game. They weren't at the Lansing City game. And that does put, I think it is less opportunity for Imperial to make their stake in those games, right? Because they didn't have those players there. And so, of course, it's like, they are – we haven't really seen the true test of them this year. We haven't because we haven't seen the players, right?
Yeah, and it's tough.
Yeah, and those are the reality is those are the 2 games that they didn't have the players there, and so now this one with Ole becomes a really big clash, and I think it becomes really important. Grand Rapids Ole, they could be are they gonna further cement kind of their hold on the standings? But a win by Detroit Imperial here this weekend, I think it kind of breaks some things open, makes some things really interesting, and honestly I kind of feel like I'm pulling for him a little bit here, and I know that maybe like, as a commentator, I don't always want to, say one way or the other. Of course, I've been with Lansing City for a long time, so of course I'm going to have a lot of, my heart is with Lansing City in every game that they play. But, for Imperial to make this win, it's this weekend. I think it would, it would kind of shake things up a little bit because right now it's like Ole hasn't lost yet. They kind of are at the top looking down. They're kind of in control of their own destiny and things. And Ole to come and say, hey, this is, we're making our mark here. When we have our team, we're going to beat, the defending NFPL champions. I think that'd be really cool to see. But I think it's going to be very interesting and a tough game for both sides.
Yeah, so I'll double down what I said last week. I thought those were the 2 teams to beat in the league. And so at full strength, I still think that's the case because we haven't seen Detroit Imperial, at least last week. In the last couple of weeks when they played Midwest as well, we didn't see the full team. And so when I think about the reason I said that, it's because of the way they play together. And so one of the things we talk about, Pierce is on the stream, one of the things we talk about with Pierce is how much commitment they have together and how much time they spend together practicing. And when we listened to Jack Fisher earlier tonight, and he talked about the youth academy and all of the time that they spend together as a team, that's what's built the cohesion in Lansing City. And they have that same cohesion, if not more so, with the team in Detroit because they spend, is it like 5 nights a week they're practicing together?
I think that's what Pierce had told us. Coach Pierce had said that they're, I thought he said 5 nights a week training. And this is what I think is so, I really like this about Detroit Imperial is we were just talking with Jack Fisher about the commitment level. And that's something that everyone in the futsal world feels, right? Jenga, are they going to be able to travel with the players they want to travel with, right? Players that are soccer and futsal players. And to hear that Detroit Imperial is a team that they, like hearing that from Coach Pierce and seeing the way they play, you can tell that they love this game. And honestly, I think this is the greatest story about Detroit Imperial is that they are a group of people that love this game and they're dedicating time to it that other people, that other teams and other players, we've seen other people not match that same level, not everyone. And I think that's like, a lot of people, I know Luke's been on the stream before and he kind of appreciates some of the bad boy, kind of mentality. And for me, it's like, I think the true gem of Detroit Imperial is that, like how much they love the game, how much they're playing. And to me, that's the story that I would want to tell, that I would want to hear as a fan is, these are guys that they love this game. I mean, last year they were playing 2 leagues. They played in the NFPL and they were playing in the FCS, right? So obviously this year they had to make a decision and they had to devote, where is their team going to be? But that's what I think is something that's very special about them is they have a group of people that they love this game and they're playing with it. They're playing it all the time. They're training all the time. They're spending lots of time with each other. And that's an amazing thing for the sport of futsal.
And when we think about their passion, think about the commitment to the game. So I was at the first game when they played Midwest. So that was the first game I got to commentate. And one of the things that was really fascinating for me to see is they were dominating Midwest, but they never let up. So they never pulled off the gas. They never slowed down. Their intensity level never weakened. No matter who rotated in the game, they still played with full intensity, with full energy and passion. And it's one of the things that has always been the draw for me to futsal is how much people give. And you can see it with Detroit. You can see how much passion they have for the game. And so that's one of the things I think about. What team are we going to see Saturday night? What team are we going to see, right? Are we going to see that same team that came out and truly dominated against Midwest? I mean, I know a lot of teams have played Midwest really strong.
Yeah, it's really hard to draw. It's really hard when you have that one team that's negative 68 in the goal differential right now.
But this is the part, right? And I know it was my first game too, right? So,
yeah.
But it's one of the things that I thought, I got to watch all of the games against Midwest, and I thought of all of the games, they were the team that had the most cohesion and creativity as an offense. And that
talking about Detroit did?
Detroit Imperial. Yeah, that's just my perception. And so it's one of the things that I haven't seen that from them recently.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to see that again. And I think if we bring that, or if they bring that this weekend, then we're going to see a different game than we saw last weekend. Because honestly, I was disappointed against Lansing City because I didn't see any of the things I was anticipating to see from them. And one of the things, even though we're cycling out players, a lot of these players have been playing and practicing 5 nights a week.
Yeah, which I just had Pierce said it's 5 nights confirmed. So that's how much they train.
And I would have expected to see them replicate what the rest of the team does, right?
Yeah.
So even if they're missing those starters, right, I would have seen them still replicate it. And so it's one of the things with Lansing City is they've been missing players throughout the season. other players just step up, and the system doesn't change. So they don't change their offensive philosophy. Now, they've lost a lot of tight games this year, right? And you can tell that missing those players hurts, but the structure, the offensive system, the defensive system, none of that changed. And so I don't know if that's just my perception, right, and just my lack of understanding of Detroit Imperial's philosophy, but it seemed like it changed. And maybe that was just because of Lansing City, right? Maybe they did adapt because they wanted to shut down Jeremy, right? Maybe they were changing their offensive structure and the defensive structure to lock down the central area of the court, right? We've seen a lot of teams do that. We've seen a lot of teams adjust in that way because of him and because of the talent that he brings, right? And so are we going to see that from Imperial? Are they going to go back to what we saw earlier in the year? Or are they going to have more of this defensive, like, let's just give possession to Olay and then try to play off of that?
Yeah, I really don't think that we'll see that second option. I don't think that is typically what we see from Detroit Imperial. They're not usually the type of team that wants to sit back and counter. They want to play aggressively. And I think that, there's, when they split from Midwest, I'm sure there's a whole bag of things that went into that. But one key difference I see from those two teams, and even philosophy as a coach, when we talked with Francois, he talked all the time about counterattacking and sitting in. And I just, I look at players like Davide Depoce and Omar Labicki and, these guys who, Abdullah Saleh and Michael Forbes and there's more that I don't have right in front of me, but they, particularly, Davide and Omar, I think they provide this energy and this, and I think they like to play that way. So I think that's how we'll see them at full strength with against Olay, and I think Olay are going to have their hands full. I think Olay. We saw their most recent game was against Midwest at home, and Midwest gave up a lot of goals that game. I mean, in my opinion, Midwest lost that game against Olay. There's a reason why it didn't really feel like a 9-1 game. Almost every goal was kind of a giveaway. And I don't expect to see that from Detroit Imperial. They're not a team that generally, is going to be giving away. But the reality is, so far this season in the FCS, they have beat Jinga at home in the first game, and they beat Midwest twice, and then they lost away at Jinga, and then lost 2 times, with players gone. So this is kind of all right, the test. This is the litmus test. We're talking about this off air. It's like this is what it is for them. What who is this team this year? And I hope we see that competition and that passion for the game out on the court. Without some of the things that we've seen as far as some red cards and cautions. I mean, we saw a player throw a ball at someone earlier this year. Like, I want to see that in the game and not in those extra ways. I mean, that's the kind of culture that I would love to see out of them, because they love the game so much.
Yeah, really looking forward to the game. And it is a huge game when we think about the playoffs and we think about what the table currently looks like right now. If they don't take full points from the game, they're going to be in a really rough spot the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I mean, this was the position that I know, we talked about Lansing City as well. They dropped 4 games, and they were kind of in that position. And then, beating a Detroit Imperial team here at home, that wasn't, their first squad. I mean, Lansing City looked good, but I think a lot of teams would probably look good against, the team that Imperial brought this, on Saturday. So, they're kind of in a similar place of, what is their trajectory? How are we going to see them in their next one as they welcome Jinga? And who is Jinga going to bring? That's what Jack talked about a little bit. What kind of team does Jinga bring? Who do they have available? When we're talking with Coach Satoru Matsushima of Jinga, he mentioned that we understand, other teams have traveled to us and now it's our turn. And, they won a lot of games at home, but you got to wonder that travel, as the year plays out, are we going to see the impact of that travel more and more, and who those players can bring, or who Jinga is able to bring from a player standpoint. But let's just turn our attention. We had some clips that we were thinking about showing from this past game. But honestly, I feel like, because of all the players that are missing, it's like this is not really who Detroit Imperial is these last 2 games. Like I've seen Detroit Imperial play the last few seasons, and this isn't who they are. They, like Pierce was saying, 15 players plus 3 more that weren't there. So it's like totally different roster. But in this week's upcoming game, who, on both sides, what kind of on those teams, what players are you kind of looking out for that if you were to tell, the audience watching today, hey, watch out for these players during this Olay and Detroit Imperial game?
So, one of the things when we got to go up close to Olay and watch those games in person, one of the people I was most impressed with was actually Sammy Esquivel. And so it wasn't just his offensive presence. What really sold me on him was his commitment to defense. And it's one of the things we could say really about anybody on Olay. But he just stood out to me as being a leader on that team, being somebody that not only was heavily involved in the creative flow and scoring goals and assists, but he continually put his body on the line. I continually see him tracking back. And some of the things that we love to see, and we've called out with Josh Robeson this week and David Saltzman about that energy and intensity getting back on defense. I saw that from him time and time again. So he's somebody that I think is going to have a big impact in the game. And then I've said it a few times already tonight, but Davide De Poche, I think he's going to be somebody to look out for. His creativity and his ball work, his technical skills are outstanding. And so, it was one of the things, it was one of the first comments I made when I got the opportunity to commentate their game, that his technical skill on the ball was fabulous, and I just really was enthralled with it. And so I would love to see more of that this weekend. And then we transition to Lansing City and Jenga. Really, one of the things kind of interesting, Tamisawa, he came from Japan, right, to play in our league.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be one of the key difference makers because last time Lansing City and Jenga played, Jenga had really fantastic defensive structure. And this is going to be a wider court than they're used to playing on. Are we still going to see that? And a big component of that structure in the back is the goalie. Is the goalie able to organize everyone?
Yeah.
And so that's what I look for him to be, somebody to be either keeping the team structured with where they need him defensively, or not being able to allow Lansing City to run through them. And then for Lansing City, I mean, you could really point to any number of players to have an impact. The first name that always comes off the mind is Jeremy, right? Jeremy Kleppel. We think that he's somebody. But for me, I think if Jeremy's the person that we're talking about, that Jenga's going to shut them down, because that's what they did last time. They focused on that. So for me, the key difference maker of Lansing City's going to make an impact is most likely going to be somebody like Trezor Crispane, right? How is he going to be able to free flow and find the space in the court to create opportunities? And that's where they really struggled last time against Jenga. They took over 30 shots, but a lot of the shots were outside of the arc. A lot of the shots were not on target. And so they need somebody to be able to get closer, make some back post runs, really create some dangerous opportunities. And Chris Payne's the one that I would think would do that.
And that's going to be this Saturday. Lansing City will host Jenga at 7 p.m. And, of course, the Olay traveling to Detroit Imperial is going to be at 8 p.m. So a little conflicting of game schedules there, unfortunately. So you're going to have to watch one or the other, maybe one on both screens. We're going to be here in Lansing, so we'll probably miss at least the first half of that other Olay and Imperial game. But I'm sure we're going to want to watch that one back and see what's going on. We might even be able to give updates during the game. Hopefully we can, and we can get a little bit of info of what's going on there. But that'll be an exciting one. Lots of players to look out for. I think if we talk about the Lansing City and the Jenga game, I think it's kind of a key game for both teams. Can Jenga, from Jenga's perspective, can they travel well? We've only seen them travel really twice, and one was at the very beginning, and one was recently. They didn't come away with victories in both. And then, so now they have another chance to do that. And then, Lansing City, when they, are we going to see their younger players not committing some of those immaturity mistakes, which is, really, when we kind of look at how they've given up their goals this year, it's almost always been, giving the ball away in a bad position. There was one on Saturday. Ball was given away like almost right in front of the goal. And we've seen that, those kinds of mistakes happen. And so we'll see what is it like when they get a host Jenga for them? And that'll definitely be exciting to watch. And just before you say that, I wanted to point out something that Pierce was in the chat again, talking about the group last week and that they brought, pointing to a lack of experience was what he felt. And I think that, I would have to agree. I think that's what we saw on the court was, players that didn't have that game experience. I do think Emerson Velasquez, I think he had a pretty phenomenal game. I mean, I think he's one of the reasons why there was, almost no goals in the first half and a lot in the second half.
And there's a call out. We called this out during the game, but he did get hurt.
He did.
And so they did give up a couple of quick goals. He hurt either his hand or his wrist. And
I think it might have been his finger. When I looked back at it, it almost looked like because it was a really close. It was like a really close to his to net, and Cernuda just had a shot, and it almost looked like the ball just like kind of jammed his finger. That's what it looked like to me.
It was frustrating to not only for him as a player to go through that, but for Detroit Imperial, the way they played up to that point. They did just give up a couple of quick goals, and then he did get hurt, but the momentum shifted so fast, and it was something that they never recovered from. And if he doesn't get hurt, do we maybe see them recover? Because he had 21 saves even with the injury.
It's possible. But I do have to tell you, I think you can only take a barrage like that was happening for so long. I mean, almost 70 shots in the game.
Yep.
It's like at some point, I mean, he was literally facing so much that he was in a position where he got hurt. Right?
Yeah.
And like that, you don't want that for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was such a bummer for him and for Detroit. But I feel like it was only a matter of time before those, because they're giving up these opportunities even kind of close to the arc sometimes.
One of the things I'm curious about, we know how strong Velasquez is. We know how strong Michael Forbes is. Is there a way to get both of those players on the court at the same time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like maybe this will be something that we can talk about another time on another show. The idea of like the two goalies in futsal, right? We've seen some teams that they go with two goalies, right? We've seen that almost every team. I think every team except for Midwest, I believe, we've seen more than one goalkeeper in play. I mean, we had Weisenhunt and Tomisawa. Of course, Ole has Mendoza and Montez. Midwest midseason added Miguel Cervantes along with Vicario, and at the beginning of the year, Detroit Imperial had Burciaga, and then he got hurt, and Forbes stepped in, and then now Velasquez there. So it's very interesting because you don't really see that in outdoor soccer. You don't really see that change. So maybe that'll be an interesting topic for us to discuss a different time. But your take on it, what do you think? Do you think do they try to take those two, Velasquez and Forbes? They try to do half and half, or?
So look, if I'm Pierce, what I'm thinking right now is, can Forbes play on the court? Can he play maybe as a fixo? Right.
Interesting.
Put him at ala. Let's see what can happen. Because one of the things when you fly the keeper, and so one of the things that we made a comment about, we talked about earlier tonight, was when Velasquez came out, we didn't have that structure in the back when there was a quick transition. And so if you don't have somebody really defensive-minded when you fly the keeper, then it can put you in a rough spot. And so from what I've seen from Forbes so far this season, he's really strong on the ball.
Yeah.
And so he's somebody that could play in that role potentially, right? And I'm not really intimate with his skill set and if that's something that could even be possible. But that's one of the things I start to think about, because when you look at a roster, you say, how do I get my 5 best players on the court at one time?
Yeah.
And if he's one of the 5 best players, if both of them are in the top 5, then let's make it happen. Let's figure out how do we do it.
I've never seen Forbes not in a goalkeeper uniform.
Yeah.
It's hard to picture, though. Clearly he's one of the most comfortable on the ball coming out of goal, right?
Definitely is.
I remember one of the first games, he came right in front of the camera, and I was talking about his dreadlocks because I was like, this guy, he's got the amazing dreads, and he put in a goal in, and I was like, what a show we just got right there. But yeah, it's definitely that's some of what we've missed seeing on the court and as viewers, the likes of Michael Forbes and company out there for Imperial.
For those that haven't seen him, so we know Thunder Thighs has the strongest right leg in the league, Jeremy Kleppel, but Michael Forbes is right up there. I mean, he's got
some strength.
Yeah, he's got
power.
Sure. And so for me, I'm thinking like, how can we see more of that? And it's one of the things I do love about having Forbes on goal is his aggression. You talk about that's one of the ways that really Detroit Imperial is known is that attacking mindset and that aggressive offensive mindset. And so, how do we get more of that? How do we see him taking more shots, putting the full power on display?
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see. Any last comments or thoughts regarding the games this weekend? Detroit Imperial story of this season up to this point. Anything that you would want to wrap up?
The one thing that we didn't really touch on is the difference of what we saw from Lansing City against Detroit Imperial. We talked some of like the defensive structure for Detroit Imperial, but when Lansing City played Jenga really shut down the middle area of the court, and we didn't really see some of the free-flowing creativity that we saw this past weekend from Lansing City. And what I'm really curious about is if we will see them be that creative and free-flowing on offense, if Jenga has that same mentality, or if they'll kind of get sucked into that same type of game flow that they had down in Cincinnati.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting. I definitely think that the court down in Cincinnati that they played on, I think it's much smaller, particularly width-wise, and that definitely impacts. I can't remember off the top of my head the players that Lansing City was able to bring down there. I know we mentioned that Jack Fisher wasn't there. I don't believe Drew Barney was there either. And those are, as far as players for Lansing City that have strong futsal technical ability to control the ball and to handle under pressure. I mean, outside of Jeremy Kleppel, I think those are the two that I would probably choose to handle things outside of him. So we did see a lot of shots from Jeremy. Personally, I don't think it works out the same for Jenga here at the arena. I think the court size is I think if they try to do what they did in the first game, I think we might see some of what we saw this past Saturday against Detroit Imperial. How long, I feel like it would just be a matter of time before something breaks through. Now, whenever that happens, you do have the opportunity for counterattacks, and you have the opportunity. Lansing City did give away a couple of easy ones at the beginning, and there was actually at least one other one that I remember seeing that Imperial had a very good chance to go up 3. And sometimes, you blink and you could go down 6-0 like they did to Midwest, and that's hard to climb out of. So, for me, I don't think it will work out as well for Jenga this Saturday. But if they're able to get some mistakes out of Lansing City and score some transition goals, when you are up, in the score line, playing that kind of pack it in, park the bus defense, when you are ahead, you have more. You can kind of keep doing what you're doing, but then once the game starts out of your hands, you're in some trouble, because if you got to go and attack, well, then now you got to come out of that. You got to try to high press, and that's where I think if that were to happen, I think Lansing City would probably route that kind of a defense.
And I think that's when we asked about the players that we think are going to have the biggest impact on the games. That's why I said Trezor as well, because his true breakout game this season was against Midwest. You remember that game where he literally single-handedly changed the momentum of the game, right? They did end up losing the game, but they were down 6-0, and he brought them back, right? And when we think about how he's going to show up, we didn't see that against Jenga. We didn't see a strong pivot against Jenga. We didn't see.
Trezor wasn't there, correct? Or was he?
Well, it's one of the things that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if he was there, but
it's weird that we wouldn't remember.
Yeah, right.
Because you would think that whenever usually when he's in the game, because he does leave, even if it's just a physical impact on the game.
But when Lansing City started the season, he wasn't the starting pivot.
Yeah.
Right? They started the season with Jonah Timblow starting pivot.
Yeah.
And I think the plan all along was for Trezor to grow into that role.
Yeah.
And I think when he really stepped up was against Midwest. Like, that's where we saw the fullness of what he can be.
Yeah.
And what Jeremy's expecting him to be in that role.
Yeah.
And if he shows up in that way against Jenga, I don't think they're going to be able to stop Lansing City.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an avalanche of goals. But if he doesn't show up and then there's no creativity, then quick counterattacks can completely change the face of the game.
Yeah, from a scoreline perspective, I mean, it doesn't really matter how many chances you get. You have to finish on those chances, and that was a lot of what we saw in game number 1 against Jinga for them. Lots of chances, but not a lot of goals. So we'll see how that turns out this weekend. But I think to wrap things up, then we got a couple of exciting games this weekend, and it's going to be fun to be here. Bummer to miss out on catching the 2 defending champions of their respective leagues. Find their match, kind of be a bummer to not see that one live. But, a couple of great games. And I think for next week's show, I think we could have a lot of new information to talk about just based on these 2 games for this weekend. And as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, of course, 4 teams making it. You got 1 team on the table that is sitting very heavily at the bottom, and as we expect that they probably would continue to be there. We'll see when they have a very front-heavy schedule and back-heavy schedule, Midwest. So we'll see if they have the same kind of players. But if that trend continues, there's really only 1 team out of the 5 that won't be going to the playoffs. So we're getting into that time where the results are going to make a big difference as part as whether you're making it in and maybe even who you're going to face.
Yeah, it says a lot about the quality of FCS when 5 of those teams are going to be fighting for those 4 spots.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how things play out this weekend. To all of you that tuned in and chatted in the comments, thanks so much for being here. This was a great time. We're excited to bring more FCS action on Saturday, and we're going to try to do these live talk shows weekly on Thursdays about various topics and what we see going on in the league. Trying to be as real and honest as we can as far as what we're seeing, and we're excited to see what we see this weekend. So I'm Jared Kleppel along with Gerard Iscani. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on Saturday.
Committing a crime so you can try to escape from prison. Bad idea. Go into the pod escape room to play an escape game with your friends. Great idea. Test your skill as an astronaut in outer space. Find Santa in Save Christmas. Or take a vacation to an abandoned island. Just don't get stuck there. The Pod Escape Room. Learn more at thepodlands.